Greetings, as I, Tantus Van Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving back into the world of darkness and Changeling The Dreaming. We have yet another Kithain to speak about. This one is more Kithain, but there's reasons why they're a little bit different and off, and we'll discuss it. Eshu. So if you're joining me, of course, live on Twitch, you're over there. If you're joining me on YouTube, hi YouTube, hello, thank you. Please appease the dark algorithm. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment. My comment to both you and the live chat is, have you played an Eshu or with one? That'd be an interesting idea. So, why don't we dive into some sources? You can look at books, if you will, to give you some extra information about the Eshu beyond what I'll be saying here. And of course, starting with the Player's Guide of Changeling The Dreaming is a great place to go, along with the second edition Changeling The Dreaming book, and of course, the Kith book, Eshu. And there's their symbol, and we can talk about them. So, Eshu are particularly born from the dreams of one other kind of region. They are from the Middle East and Africa, which is a little bit different than your average Kith/Kithain, as most of the ones that we are familiar with in Changeling The Dreaming originate from European or European descent. They themselves are wanderers and storytellers, and know peers as navigators within the dreaming. They're also risk-takers, unable to resist a dare or wager. If they feel it could succeed, if they don't think it's going to be something that could succeed, they wouldn't take it. No matter the danger, though, if there is a chance of success, they will take it. It does give them a reputation for being unreliable, but very few Kithain would kind of keep them away from them and not offer them a seat at the table to get the stories they have talking about them. Alright. So, let's talk history. Now, important to note, the Eshu believe they were the first, and they will be the last, and they won't listen otherwise. And they tell a very different tale from the Mythic Age for themselves. As the Seelie would like everyone to believe that their beginning, according to Eshu, it's not true. Because they were. In the beginning was Olirant, owner of the sky, who looked down and saw emptiness, a world where it was only sky, void, and water. He sent his young son, Obalata, the maker, to fashion a world that fit in all manner of creatures. He had his older son, I'm going to butcher some of these, so apologies for that, Ormila, the diviner, fashioned it so that it ran smoothly and those who practiced the magic of the future could glimpse its functioning. And while all this was said and done, Olirant sent Eshu, his linguistic messenger, to go down and start collecting sacrifices for him in return for having made everything possible. So Eshu had authority over roads and gateways, and loved to cause mischief, especially those who didn't give him the proper respect. He wasn't good or evil just himself, and played his tricks because his way. People that were good learned, the wicked suffered. It didn't matter to him, though, because he was just happy with what he did. And as he went, because it was his way, he sired children, who were only partly divine. They shared their father's laughter and view of the world as well as some of their power. They too were restless, took to the road, went on adventure. And much like their father, Eshu, they taught and punished and explored. They were the first of the Ojo, the followers of life, daylight, and destiny. Those would be the Seelie version of them, those that followed in their father's footsteps. Others were mad that Eshu basically left them behind, so they stole, told lies, played mean tricks on people. They became the Iku, the followers of death, darkness, and randomness, which are more the Unseelie version of them. So the Ojo and Iku are the two sides of the Eshu and are the Seelie and Unseelie. There were so many of these children that people began to think of them as Eshu themselves and started worshipping them in place of Eshu. She was angry at this, that his name had been stolen, went to investigate, saw what was going on with his children, laughed, and forgot his wrath. His children had learned their lesson well, and if humans had tricked themselves, that was their own problem. But he still had to punish his children in some way. They did steal his name, even if it wasn't wicked or not. And if he didn't, then the names of creation could be stolen and everything returned to emptiness. So he thought up a punishment that was just right and called his children to it. One group, though, fearing punishment, fled into hiding and preyed upon the weak to keep themselves alive. These became the first Aithu, which we're not going to talk about today. They're the Thalian counterparts of the Eshu. When we get into the Thalians, we'll talk about them. But legends, that's where they came about. They didn't hear the words of Shu. The others that heard it, his children, was a great and powerful secret, the first hidden lore that was entrusted to all of them. And from that day forward, they became the Elg Bra, the chosen children of El Graba Eshu, the powerful knife, keepers of his sacred places and messages to the world. He solemnly commended them to follow in his footsteps, wandering the roads, learning secrets, and testing those he came across. And he blessed and kissed each one his, to seal his magic in them, and flew off into the sky, laughing. So they, in general, a few of them stayed together to speak in matters that occurred, but most scattered. There was too much to see, and to the rest, too much to think on. They sought the edge of the world, fantastical tales. They didn't fear anything. Tales of Eshu and his deeds were bigger and wider. A few stayed in place in the lands they were to become kind of rulers, bonding with the people there, learning their secrets, tending to sacred places. And these guardians still remain, watching over the tribes, keeping hearths and fires burning. They're the true, at least in their eyes, a pure bloodline of Eshu, because they sacrifice their freedom of the trails to preserve the heritage. These are the Oba. And so what was the punishment Eshu gave him? Well, Eshu got his children to do his job for him and enjoy it. Clever little trick. And that's the story of their Mythic Age. It's a fun one. I really love that story there and how the Eshu come apart. You know, that they were born of a divine being, granted its powers, and eventually tricked to doing his job. It's a fun little story. So now we turn towards the Sundering. So, nothing was perfect. The Egbara traveled far and wide, saw what humans, learned about them. There were those that envied their gifts, desired their power. And, of course, they developed weapons, tools to turn against the Eshu. Cities grew wonderful, had tainted motives, though. Basically, the Eshu were busy teaching, they forgot to learn. And the dreaming started separating from the world afresh. In the Sundering, they were completely off guard. Some of the trails they used, the trods, became harder to travel. The distance between the world became smaller, or larger, because their travel had always been a gift. They hadn't trusted their own divinations and signs. They were distracted. It wasn't all on their own nearsightedness. During the travels, they wonder if they were the only ones, or if there were others like them. Other powerful beings had desired children, but they didn't meet other Fae. It was good to meet outsiders who understood something of their life and a little different, but others couldn't shake the prejudices of the mortal kin. The Eshu, as they were at this point in time, were still connected to mortals. The others just didn't feel connected to them, and so disliked them. It can't be said that the Eshu didn't have some prejudices, but they didn't have the same level of pettiness a lot of the other Kithain, other Fae did. And that arrogance and aloofness just was there. In fact, the Eshu in general considered the other Fae mostly barbarians didn't help the matter. So there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of problems, and, a lot of things from the Eshu's homelands in Middle East and Africa didn't spread into Europe for a long time. Again, the Eshu did eventually come to appreciate the Ile Titu, the Pale Folk, and even made them part of their family. The major change that first occurred, though, was meeting the Seelie. Because the first meeting didn't really go as well as it could have. There was friendship, diplomacy, there was some respect, but the Seelie didn't really consider them equals. Everybody else bowed to them, why didn't you? The Eshu had already heard tales of them from everybody else, so kind of knew everything they needed about them, so anything they said didn't really sway them. It was just slick words and stuff like that. And diplomacy eventually broke down, because they wouldn't recognize the aboveness of Seelie believed they had. And they tried to control the Eshu. which also didn't go well. Blood was shed, demands were made, swords were drawn, and the Eshu left without resolving the subtlety of their own authority versus the others or anything like that. And of course the Seelie spread word amongst the other Kith that the Elgbara, the Eshu, should be looked at with shifty eyes, that they're basically tricksters, bandits, shiftless aliens, that, they couldn't do anything else to them, so they used deceit to fight against them. Instead of like an open battle, which they had already lost, and people had seen them losing, that they could not get these people to submit, which was something the Seelie could not take. They used slander. Crusades didn't help them also, but they continued to tell their own stories in retaliation, and made some headway before the next big event. Shattering. The Shattering. Now, the Eshu saw the Shattering before many of the rest. They had learned their lesson about what had happened during the Sundering, and they trusted their divinations more. They realized what was going to happen because of this. They tried to warn the rest of the tribes with the Seelie smear campaign. They refused to listen. The fear in mortals' hearts, the saddening of the whole thing. They were satisfied, though, when the Seelie ran for Arcadia. But it led to so much destruction that it didn't need to. So many died. So much loss of life. Now, there is an interesting thing to say here. Changeling Land, which was developed during this time. And the Eshu are partially human. Eshu had them, the god, the divine being, had them with mortal women. Aren't they already mortals in disguise? Yes and no. With their heritage, they could appear as human if they wanted to do so, but they weren't. They were basically demigods. The thing is, though, because they looked like humans before, and they experienced mortals, it made them much easier to take the Changeling Way ritual. And it made them much easier to actually integrate with human society, because they had already walked among them so much. It was still a long and painful process to get used to, but they were the most prepared out of many of the Fae tribes. Now, we get into some pretty dark times before we get to modern age. The Interregum. Europe fell into panic of the Black Death, while the Eshu's homeland saw summoned lightning. The Oba could no longer rule over the mortals directly, but become myths and models for future leaders rather than actual leaders. They had to take a step away. Their stories became folktales and proverbs, teaching without bearing testimony to their existence, as a price of disguise. Some of the other tribes did begin to seek them out. There were few apologies made to them, but they were okay with that because they could see how they had suffered under their former treacherous leaders. There was enough ill will to go around without stirring up more. So motneys formed, providing support across tribal bounds. Freeholds, if few possible, were created to share the wisdom that they had and support other people. Fae society remained, and a little bit of hope returned. Now, the Age of Exploration was something that connected up with the Eshu very deeply. Because beyond all these problems that the Middle Ages kind of had, we had people seeking this horizons, adventure, discovery, wealth. And of course, the Eshu were there. They still reeled from the Shattering. But this was a chance to regain some glory. Tossing the seas, mysterious shores, strange cultures, terrible odds. And most captains didn't care what color you are or what creed you were as long as you kept the boat afloat. And mixing freely was just what the Dreaming tribe needed. Some looked for Tir na Nog to be free from banality. Others say they saw a way to get away from the peace of the feuds of Europe. Others just wanted adventure. And of course, the dream of this travel, the Eshu, basked in the glamour of it all. Got nearly drunk off it. Some ships that set were entirely crewed by Kithain, sailing the Dreaming and the mortal seas, becoming ghost ships of legends. Other carried adventurers, settlers. Most had an Eshu captain, or at least a majority crew. Of course, not all Eshu chose reputable trades. There were privates and privateer with a flair for the dramatic. There was often legends. They would carouse with sailors, trade tales with puka in alehouses, with a trusty troll first mate, crossing swords and quips with redcaps and knockers. They got along with a lot of the other Fae, finally. It was a great time to be Eshu. And some great legends and places were all connected to them. Of course, there were some dark times, the triangle trade, slavery. It's an old thing, but this trade here was fairly brutal. It was pretty awful. Fairly brutal, that's not the right way to say it. Basically, the experience here, even with a lot of other slavery, paled in comparison. Brutal raids, milling act, terrifying voyages, surviving to die in a foreign land. So this is basically a new level of depravity in a lot of ways. And many Eshu were lost with this, because iron manacles could bind them. If not in mind, at least in body. And Eshu, none of them would ever become slaves. It's antithetical to their nature. To trade in slaves, take the freedom of another, would have them undone in days from the banality of it. And perhaps the greatest violation of uhuru, freedom, that there is. So, it continued in the lands, even though they were opposed to it, because of all the greedy people, Fae and human alike. But however, a worldwide group of Eshu were formed, known as the Freedom Swords, who tried to end the practice. And they fought, and still fight in secrecy, to this day. But it is a legacy that has impacted them. Slave trade. The Eshu didn't really have a nose for technology in general. They avoided factories, assembly lines, instead explored to the fringes of mortal habitation. They tried to help the Nanahe, the Native American Fae, who suffered much like their own kin, but they were too scarred and just asked them to leave without hearing them out. Westward expansion was different from very much that crossed the oceans. It made mortals grim and humorless, and that puzzled them. One industrial revolution that captured them was transportation, steam engines, locomotives, automobile, flight. These wonders divided the tribe. The Ojo preferred to walk or use a mount when pressed, as it was their custom, while the Iku loved the devices as mastered them, creating bonds with the knockers that last to this day. So yes, the Unseelie Iku are good friends with knockers. And the glamour from such things was welcome to the Eshu as a whole. Dark and light times are mixed. That's how it always goes. Now, we talk modern day, because it's a confusing toy. Technology, science, numbers. There was the wilderness of the 20s, the battles of World War II, the roads of the 50s, the beatniks and hippies of the 60s, delicate democracy in the 80s, the moon landing in 1969. The big thing that the Eshu didn't see coming was their old rivals, the Seelie, coming back. And they flooded back through the gates of Ilsha, and the various faces stood transfixed. The Eshu were angered and saddened what was going to come. They had 600 years to build tribes with these other people and with Fae society, and they could see its destruction. They had formed bonds of family. Democracy had flourished, and every generation was more egalitarian than the last. But they knew the Seelie would destroy this, and so the Accordance War happened. But it wasn't nearly what they expected. They acted as ambassadors and diplomats, sued for peace in backrooms and audience chambers as they could, trying to help to see the world that the world was different, and that they couldn't go back. When that failed, they were scouts, skirmishers, and assassins. They impassioned speech to the commoners. But yeah, no. Mainly, Ojo believed that it was the will of the Orshus that the Seelie had returned to rule them, so certainly some fought the Seelie, and most fought to the last breath. Ojo and Iku alike. But there was some loyalists that were like, hey, you know what? This is a great sign. And the courage to battle as much as they were, they wish the other tribes had had it. But then something happened. High King David Ardy took the throne. Eshu feared he would just be another. But he didn't do that. He made good on his promise. He created a Parliament of Dreams and gave amnesty to the commoners captured during the war and dozens of other promises. He went against his fellow Seelie in this. He made a new Kingdom of Concordia in the place of the Concord. So, while the Eshu still distrust the Seelie, David has their support. But, yeah, now we get into the modern knights. Because, David has disappeared. The king has been lost. There's an entire storyline to it. And the Eshu saw the disappearance and tried to warn them. But they were too late. They basically saw what was going to happen if the High King disappeared. The great blackness, the destruction, the violence that was going to have. The High King had disappeared, though. His kingdom was in uproar. Hatreds have rekindled. Dark fate have returned to the world. Humans have reached new rights and splintered fear. Global harmony is disappearing. Is spring coming or endless winter? And that's where the Eshu are at this time. Dark things. So, now you know their history. Let's talk about their culture a little bit. They come in their own lot a lot of different ways depending on where they're from and how their cultures respond to people with their particular talents. Some get eased to it every step of the way with patience and wisdom. Others are dropped to it faster than they can process and struggle. Fortunately, Eshu have a knack for being where they need to be when they need to be there, and most newly awakened Eshu get found and taught of their heritage. Of course, it doesn't always happen, but that's basically most of their story. So we have to look at where they come from. Africa and the Middle East are their ancestral homelands of the Elgbara, and most come from such heritages. They have the easiest learning of them because there's so many cultures that still pay homage to them and their kind of connections. Some still hear stories of their heritage all their lives, thinking it make-believe, but when the chrysalis happens, it comes true. Some may be even raised in the courts of an Oba, if lucky, and since other tribes have few kin here, the Eshu can basically do what they want and teach what they want without them interfering. The Eshu born here are usually best suited for telling the history and legends that have the best sense of ultimate purpose. Even Iku raised here have a strong sense of truth and meaning that underlies things, and they can just choose to deny it. And many of the tribe follow the Muslim faith here and and because of it have a better sense of responsibility to a community rather than being loners. India does have a few Eshu that are very good, still born there. But the Oba still have some lands there, even though there's very few. There's still some stories told, and the Rom the Eshu share blood with have originated here. The Romani people. The Subticon has a lot of stress on mythicism and illusion, and that suits the Eshu fine. Most born here tend to be Ojo in nature and have a flair for the arts. The Eshu have practice, tending to make them wandering mystics or holy men. Some, though, fall hard into their Iku side. If reality is illusion, then there's nothing to act that actually matters. Indian Iku tend to be some of the most devilish fae in the tribe. Keep that in mind. Some of the other fae think that the Elgaram share blood with the Rom. They don't. The actual number is quite small, as the Ram are proud and secretive people. They are, however, the first Eshu to move around Europe and the Americas. The Eshu raised from the Rom, though, are some of the most clever and adaptable alive, with a real passion for the road and knack for escaping situations. Many remain close ties to their family and act as guardians, but more are going their own ways and joining motleys that become their families. There are even those that don't speak of the life they left behind. The bond of silence is strong. These are some of the greatest liars of the tribe, and expel at con games. They're not innately devious, though, as many prejudiced tongues would tell. They simply don't consider the non-Romani worthy of trust after all the hatred and violence they've received over the centuries. So it's hatred and violence that has gone on the people of this descent, and, they don't have the trust. So of course, it's not being more innately devious, it's just, which prejudice would tell, it's just them not trusting. And they're not good or evil, just themselves. If you gain their trust, good for you. But you'll know it when you do, because you're an outsider to it. Let's talk about America and the rest of the world. And Europe, too. Because in the last century, very few Eshu were born of European descent, with the exception being the Moors in Spain, who brought the learning to the barbarians and the Portuguese who shared their love of exploration. They had cousins among the Clinchorisans and Pixies, but they ceased to be true Elgabara long ago, with the exception of an occasional tryst or forbidden marriage. Blood did not mingle much with Europeans. Then came the triangle trade, which moved to the New World. The Eshu, Kithain were dragged across the sea and changed, and went there to find new horizons to escape the tyranny of old traditions. In a rush, though, many old ways and legends were lost. They found a glorious new land to explore, but lost a real grasp of who they were. South America was a little better, but most were hard-pressed to keep traditions alive. This is especially true of those born to slaves who had their powers, but not their knowledge. It is the main problem in Concordia, but this has been remedied slowly. Unless one of the tribes finds them early, they tend to become rootless vagabonds. Others expect them to be. On the positive side, the Eshu born here tend to be fiercely individualist, daring adventurers, and good at getting by. Without knowledge of their gifts, though, most manifest their storytelling as a love of folktales or urban legends, while others take the con games that they are told at birthright. As Concordia rises in prominence, the need to find these unknowing of their people and teach them their heritage has become a major goal of the tribe. And now we have to answer a question. Despite what most people think, there are people of European descent and very obvious ethnicity, white-skinned Eshu, though they are a distinct minority. While many of the other races are predominant, it is ultimately the Eshu, him or herself, who decides where they place their mark. They are Orsha by accident or chance. Ergo, what better place to play than with genetics? There are noble and ancient families of Africa who have never had an Eshu child. There are mixed European families, though, who have birthed true in only a couple of generations. Sadly, they that are born white are often treated, both in and out of the tribe, as not true. And there are very few Elgara among the Native Americans, though a few that exist are from later migrations. A handful are descendants of early explorers who dared the sea by trod or ship to get to the Americas before Columbus ever did. These ones who survived found cultures agreeable to them, and the cultures merged over time, forming a lasting bond. Most come into their own among the Ninuay, and a few realize they are different until they meet the tribe, so they believe them part of the Native American thing. They tend to share bonds with the earth that the Nunaway demon called on the totems as well as the Orsha to work their magic. Some even claim to walk the Umbra as the Bedhaven. They tend to call on the tales in the form of tribal legends and secrets, which is quite valuable at a time when ancient ways to decay. They tend to leave the other Eshu alone, as their Nunaway kin don't care for them, but they are family deep down. Two other regions to talk about: Asia and Australia. The Fae of the Middle Kingdom in Asia are polite but not receptive to the Eshu. They have claimed their territory, but since when does a do not enter sign been anything but a challenge for them? For the Elgabara. Most of the Eshu from Asia come from islands and from the nomadic tribes to the north, but there are a few more emblematic Asian cultures. Eshu ways tend to wear on many of the other peoples of the east, though. While they prove the hostility and Ojo ideas of honor, the wandering ways of the tribe are viewed with suspicion, like a sign of weak character or deep-seated tenacity for troublemaking. Eshu tend to be easily noticeable by the Hisen, if not easily caught, and Elgabara are quickly find ways to suppress some of their wilder tendencies, which has led to a few fall in banality, or take up separate roles like performers, fishermen, wandering monks. Most end up fleeing for freer lives elsewhere, though the wonders of ages are worth the risk sometimes. Most here channel gifts into writing poetry, and some claim one of Eshu's chosen invented writing in Asia long ago. These words are surprisingly vivid and beautiful to hear. Now, in Australia, there's legend of one of the original children of Eshu wandering south across the sea on a rainbow bridge following a falling star. While there's no proof, this is where the Eshu among the Aborigines came from. It doesn't sound improbable. Changelings, rainbows, makes sense. Elgabara, born from the originals, as they refer to themselves, don't tend to wander far from their shores, as if something is holding them back, or they're trying to protect something. And they don't seem in a hurry to tell the rest of the tribe. They're friendly with a far-away look in their eyes, even more than other Eshu, as if there's something that they want to be. They have strong ties to the far and deep dreaming, which spring no doubt from their ties to Aboriginal dream time, and strong ties to Uluru, the sacred sites of the originals. Let's talk about their blessings of the Eshu. So, Eshu cherish their Kithain, respect Kinship, respect the Kithain, and honor the Oshiras, but they are different from them all. Eshu gave them great gifts, all to carry out their tasks. Spirit pathways are perhaps the greater of Eshu's birthrights. They have a talent for always being in the right place at the right time, and they are never in for a dull existence. Where the action is, they are, or at least on the way. It doesn't mean the happiest or most pleasant places, and not the most obvious or easiest. The right place. It's always where they're meant to be. Ojo and Iku bicker about what this means, but they'll both agree that it's still true. The Uhuru is an outlook above finding expression in... so basically, it's an outlook of finding expression in philosophy of Uhuru, or freedom. Philosophy is basically this. All beings should be allowed to pursue their destiny, and only the Oshiras intervening as they see fit to test the worthy and damn the wicked. And this freedom goes beyond physical. Eshu despise coercion and manipulation that tries to make someone act against their will, and will even respond violently to it. Even the Fae that make a living off of gullibility or of the others rely on the target's free choice in taking the bait. Hospitality is also an important thing to them. Because of their wandering ways, they have a tradition of it. Ancient traditions, as well as other Kithain, demand accepting another into the tribe in need, no matter what. Since Elgabar are few and far between, it seldom is imposition. Unless someone is in dire enemy, it can't be refused. Since there are a few others who will look out for the Eshu, they must do it for themselves or the tribe will fall to pieces. So if someone's at your door, and they're polite, you can do what they need for them. Tailcraft is another part of their blessings. It's one of the Eshu's birthrights. Some of the other Kithain can overlook the tailcraft of the Eshu as being a significant thing. But it's nice to tell stories. It's nice to tell stories, but so what? The Eshu love stories because they are stories. Don't forget that. Mortals tell stories of the early Elgabara. The Eshu accepted them. Stories keep the Eshu in touch. They teach. Plus, these wanderers have developed a way to share everything they've seen in this way. In this way, also, history is important. They have a sacred duty to remember the lore of tribes, both mortal and Kithain. With a knack for being in the right place at the right time, they often witness great events, and their status as an outsider can help them record things objectively. Their travels keep the stories fresh, and in the minds of people who don't forget their past mistakes and can inspire tales of greatness. In the same, also, listening is important. One must listen to learn how to master craft a tale, and Eshu love to hear well-told tales. And they remember what they're told, keeping eyes and ear open for new trails and tales. Fearless, asking questions, taking detours, persistent, never passing up a chance to go there. Let's talk traditions. They have many traditions, and most would lose phrase from having to get or forget one. The three main ones are greeting, animals, and truths. Greetings. When two Eshu meet for the first time, it's customary to spit in or lick a hand before shaking hands. Originating from tribes in Africa, it used to serve as a pledge not to curse the other, but now it's simply a sign of friendship. No sharing cake happens if one refuses to spit. They don't hold other tribes to this custom. Most Eshu hate killing animals for sport, and they prefer to strangle animals if they do kill so they don't spill blood, and they don't want to waste any part. Some will even drink the blood. They never kill an animal they and their companions can't eat in one sitting. They will not bring the limb off of trees, without asking first the Nai of the tree for permission. They also perform a ritual before cutting down a tree, where they first remove a small branch and place it before another tree. Once the tree is cut down, they pour beer on the stump and say, I give this gift of beer to Nai, if one lives here, and ask him to go to another tree. If they do this, they avoid any curse the tree spirit might place on them. The party then drinks the rest of the beer. Some other things important is their recklessness. This is the frailty of the Shu. Other Kithain look at Elgabar as reckless, accepting they gamble or challenge them out of the odds. Is it a bad thing, though? The Shu sees them as being too like the mortals, ducking challenges, excitement for routine, afraid of risks that could harm their courts and careers. The Shu are aren't afraid to live their lives in all its joy and hardships. Curses. They do believe strongly in curses, including those from Ganasa or Bounds. They also believe everyone has the power to curse by actions or words. They can be this because a knowledgeable energy can merely speak the curse, and the Elgar's own power of a belief will make it true. And they have an affinity for the realm of Seelie. Now, finally, we talk of Oshirans. While some would compare Oshirans to patron saints, that's really only the best way to describe it in Western minds. It's not necessarily indicative of Voodoo, but some Eshu do practice that religion. It's more like totem spirits, creator spirits who choose a particular group to protect, grant favors in return for prepared sacrifice. Some are gods or demigods and always have been. Others are ancestors who have driven godhood to triumph and tragedy. Non-Eshu follow them. They all believe in them. Even Muslim or Christian El-Gabara see them as guardian angels, messengers of God, or similar beings. All pay homage to Eshu, birther, if only as a token of respect. Some develop bonds to other Ashur or Orisha as well, though as exception, not the rule. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about their social structures. Here. Talk about their social structures. So, they are a paradox when it comes to social structures. The Eshu are. They're a close family and will do almost anything to help each other in times of need, while at the same time being scattered far and wide, rarely seeing each other. They spend lonely lives on the road, but maintain their culture and adapt to new customs. They have a strong community identity, even far from home in time and space. They have many nobles, especially in their homelands, but no real hierarchy, which drives the city particularly batty, which also gives the delight to them. The trick is every Eshu takes care of themselves first and foremost. Whatever Jenny's left over, those of the tribe as well. It sounds too simple to be true, but you're not in El-Gabara. They do have a higher authority, the Ulba Council, which guides and makes sure important tales reach the farthest El-Gabara. They're not masters, though simply those whose destiny is to be a stable base of the tribe. They have other nobles, but no flawed chart where they fit in. A caliph may be no less a noble under him or her with land and responsibilities, or might tend the court themselves. Those of lower station give respect to those above, but mind their own lands and business without needs of a greater hierarchy like the city. Nobles with differences settle them openly, and then forgive when the ordeal is over. This works because the Shu value the wisdom of their nobles, not their titles. Respect can only be earned. For their motleys, they rarely form regular motleys among themselves. It usually only happens when the tribe comes together to respond to a great threat to the tribe, or to protect a freehold the tribe calls its own, and usually only lasts as long as it takes to complete the task or uphold the oaths, and no longer. They may remain friends, but usually don't travel together again. El-Gabara enjoy each other's company, but only for so long. There's innate fear in staying together too long will find their destinies diminish their uhuru. If they decide to join a group, it's usually with other Fae to make sure things stay lively on the road. They won't travel with Sidhe. Though individually they may earn respect, they usually are too prone to complaining and giving orders to just be too much of a hassle. So, a Seelie individual could, yeah, you're okay, but just I'm not traveling. The Ile Igbo. Eshu control very few freeholds outside their own lands. The few they do are the personal homes of grunts, who use them as story circles and gathered places where they can catch up on tribal news and pass tales to the younger ones still on the road. The most famous of this is the Bull Ring in Barcelona, Spain. But most aren't so formal. More like a fairy equivalent of a youth hostel in Europe or Australia, staffed by Eldabara who, when available, are there. They tend to be plain and comfortable, and no one minds if you stay for a while, as long as you pitch a tale or help with the chores and earn respect. Just about every big city has one, if you keep your eyes open for it. And finally, Changeling The Dreaming. The other Kithain look to Eshu when it comes to traveling the silver path beyond mere dreaming into the wild dream. The Velbara have walked the paths the Inai since the first mortal dreamed, and know more about than all the other tribes put together. Most Eshu quest in the far dreaming at least once in their lifetime, and more than a few walk those paths regularly. Few, though, wander the deep dreaming without cause, because it's easy to lose yourself and your destiny. Let's talk about the lifestyle of an Eshu. Style. Ask one or other of the Fae what Eshu looks like, especially in Concordia, they usually say all bright fabric, colored sashes, hoop earrings, jingly bells, etc. Or they avert their eyes and mumble something about a loincloth and a turban. This is mostly false. Yes, Elgabar take pride in their ancestry, especially on holy days, but traditional dress is not everyday wear. The Elgabar tend to adopt the styles of the cultures they travel among, though more to understand their ways of blending in. They can't help but add their own touches to their wardrobe still. Variety represent past travels that set them apart from other denizens of the realm. Therefore, having a striking, unique look in both mortal and Fae appearance. Some consider them exotic or seductive. Looking good is more than fashion, it's expression. Carousing. Though they may not have the level of reputation of a good time as some of the others, they do enjoy parties and festivals in a way that surprises most of their tribes, who assume they are unhappy not being the center of attention. True, they don't mind telling tales to the assembly or enjoying taking part in performances and little dramas that are most part of the changing gatherings, but they like listening to stories too. They don't have to be the center. Plus, get to Elgabara for a game of Never Have I Ever, Truth or Dare, and you have a legendary gathering at hand. The stories they become. So, romance. The Elgabara have sought after lovers and are sought after lovers in Fae society, who want a lover who can recite verses, likes to travel, and will brave any challenge on the beloved's behalf. Their perfect timing comes in handy in more ways than one as well. They sweep others off their feet, play the courtly love to a hilt, and when they are smitten, there's no such thing as impossible when it comes to the beloved is concerned. Most others love to revel along. Difficulties arrive when it's time to move on to a new parm or town, and the lover can't deal with it. They think they can tame the Eshu, make them give up the road for good, but it's not possible. At least not with succumbing to banality. And so the Eshu are heartbreakers and have an undeserved reputation of being faithless lovers. But it doesn't stop the lovers from coming. And maybe one day they'll actually find a companion that understands and loves them the way they are. It's rare but possible, and wonderful when it happens. It's good for them to remember, though, they are still responsible for their actions. While storytelling is and always been the most sacred means of passing on a tale for them, it's not the only way. Word-wise, Eshu become good writers and poets. Performers become singers, actors, lyrics, and orators. What matters to all the Eshu is the basic need to tell stories. A need that usually takes hold even before the chrysalis and expresses its way. For their seemings, their age, of course, does affect how they live their lives. Childlings make for better followers than leaders. They're attentive, polite, and full of questions and observations. They tend to be loners and won't follow one adult for too long, many up living as stowaways or runaways. Wilders believe the greatest adventures are yet to come. A young hero or heroine will often style themselves as from modern-day African deity to rugged wanderer. Legends of great adventurers are a challenge to beat. And of course, grumps tend to either move between a few preferred places of travel, or to settle down and start the Eshu storytelling circles, or Ili Igbo, the tribes are known for. Telling stories of their past adventures when they were young, and to the young and new can help benefit from their wisdom. So basically, when they finally get old, they're ready to pass on those stories. Let's talk about two groups, and a few small groups. Because we have to talk about the courts. Because the Eshu are recently being lumped into the Celtic-derived system of Seelie and Unseelie. Though they recognize those terms and use them when dealing with Kithain, they have terms for themselves, though, and they use them amongst themselves. Those who follow the ways of honor and tradition prefer Ojo, or Daylight Fae. Those who follow the philosophies of cast off old ways and indulgent passions, the death of tradition call themselves Iku, or Death. It doesn't mean that all Ojo are kind and generous, or even all Iku are murderous revelers. Both groups follow Uhuru. It can be as bad to be caught in the hands of an Ojo judge who will not bend as it is to be caught by an Iku with a grudge. The Eshu attach no stigma to these philosophies, except in extreme cases, because all the Fae that they see as themselves. Judge an Eshu by his chosen court, at your own peril. So most Eshu fact that you're going to meet are going to be Ojo. It comes naturally, and most Elgabara are drawn to the strengths of the millennia of traditions and history. They don't follow the Seelie court from which they predate. They have their own standards to judge themselves by. Though they will still uphold Seelie when it doesn't come into conflict with them. They have different core values. They have their code, and how they connect with the Seelie code for them. Their code is, heed the call of fate. Kismet, destiny, fate, whatever you call it. All of them believe that the Orshas have ordained everything that happened, and that they must follow this fate, at least as it calls it. Those who fail are sad souls that struggle for years to get back on their path. This is why they must accept every challenge put before them. Pass on what you heard. Oral history is nothing new to the Eshu. Countless Oba have served as Gurai of villages. Even those from other cultures are walking histories of where they come from. It's not just memorizing stories, it's passing them on. Seek justice for those unheard. Except for the Oba who walk in their lands in pride and full view, the Eshu are outsiders, never fully trusted by those they walk among. They can feel quite strongly at times. Due to the distance, they feel kinship with other marginalized people and do their best to help runaways, castaways, fringe dwellers, and minorities when they can. Now, they have some thoughts in the Seelie code, too. Death before dishonor. Those without honor are without dignity. Without dignity, existence is little more than animals. Despite stereotypes, an Eshu will retreat when necessary, but cowardice and oath-breaking are unforgivable. So they do agree with that. Love conquers all. Eshu to have many lovers in their life, but whomever becomes their true beloved becomes the center of their life, for the Elgabara has given them the greatest offering, part of their freedom. They guard lovers with their life, avenge their slights against them, and always return to them. Beauty is life. Eshu may find beauty a bit differently than their Kithain cousins. Beauty in nature and experience, but beautiful moments are their lives as much as breathing and walking. Never forget a debt. To owe someone is to put a limit on Uhuru, so paying them off quickly is normal for an Elgabar, if incurred at all. Not honoring a death is not tolerable. If the word of honor is not good, how can their stories carry real weight? Now we have to talk about the Eshu. The Elbara don't put much stock in the Eshu as Kithain, but they do make certain amount of sense. If anything, the Eshu wish the other tribes didn't need to have them on walls to remind them. So, this is what they think of the Eshu. The right of demesne? Yeah, this one seldom agrees with Eshu since they don't stay long in any one place to rarely establish such ties. They generally ignore it when passing through, and most leaders feel it much better to let them and have them go on rather than staying and causing trouble. The right of dream. The Elgabara are teachers of Fae and mortals alike, and feel that they should respect the right of mortals to dream in peace. Ripping creativity from people doesn't do anyone good, it only serves banality. Rights of ignorance. The Eshu are fast, but even they can't outrun the enemy forever, much less banality. The less an opponent knows about you, the harder it is to find. that suits them fine. The right of rescue. Many Kithain turn to the Eshu to organize rescues, figuring their knack for surviving is what they need. Fortunately for them, they are right. Rescuing another Fae is good for the Dreaming and good for your reputation. The right of safe haven. Hospitality is important to an Algabara. They always try to respect the customs of the host, not overstay their welcome, and return the hospitality double if their host ever needs it. They will punish transgressors among the right of life. To take the life of your fellow Fae gets one undone by banality pretty quickly. Good enough reason not to do it. So it's sort of like most of these things they tend to agree with, and they just don't need to see them brandished up on a wall. Now we have to talk about the Iku, the Unseelie. They see things a bit different. The Eshu may treat both Ojo and Iku the same, but Iku know that's not true. They know the Oja see them as a joke, a nasty, bitter one at that, and the moment the rest of you know, you drop down a few notches on the list. Many think because they don't bow down to destiny that they aren't real Elgabara, but they have a code, too. Though not exactly like the Unseelies, they mesh all right. There's no destiny. Does it shock you? They get off on their little bondage game, that Ojo get off their little bondage game and think it's important and stuff like that. There are Ashiras, yes. The Iku hardly think that they have time or desire to make up tests for little cosmological acts for the Eshu. Where does this leave them? Hopeless, adrift in the universe without meaning and purpose? Hardly. Their Eshu is chosen. Why they are always in the right place at the right time? Where else could you be? The Iku make choices that logically lead them somewhere. What does this mean? That they truly, ultimately, free. When trouble, leave trouble in your wake. There's one thing that Iku agree without the with the Ojo about is that society needs change. Which one? All of them. What government is ultimately corrupt? What society doesn't ultimately fall to racism to feel safer? It's their job to tell stories and histories, right? Make sure people learn mistakes of their past. Well, vain humans still don't get it. Stories have lost their edge, their danger. And so that's where the Iku come in. They use their ability with words to raise hell, make change, incite riots, spread rumors, twist words, fan the flames of civil unrest, stuff like that. They are the embodiments of change. Revenge is divine. There are Eshu out there that still, even without destiny, the favored children of one of the mightiest and most feared of Osha out there. So even without that destiny, they're still that. And so they act it. They do know that they want and make the mortals want them, but never let them think that they're anywhere close to the level. So yeah. From the Unseelie code. The Unseelie do have a code, and so they are kind of Unseelie, so these rules are observed in violation as often or not. So yeah, they're kind of like, the Unseelie code kind of connects with them, that kind of exists. We'll have to talk about it one day. Change is good. It's a no-brainer. Eshu are change, and raw possible unpredictability incarnate. Glamour is free. On the road, and Eshu can't usually cultivate those long-term touchy-feely relationships that are needed to muse people. Ravaging is often the only way to get glamour, but the Eshu bring excitement to their lives, so why not get something from it? Honor is a lie. Making a promise means you aren't free. Good things the Eshu are expert liars and more manipulatives. They try to watch out for oaths backed by the dreaming because no tongue, however smooth, can keep you out of that. Passion before duty. Once you realize you're not one of the truly free, you're one of the truly free people on Earth, it's easy to indulge yourself. Now we finally can mention the Shadow Court to finish up today. The Eshu have their own way of speaking about the Kithain, which makes sense, seeing as they come from an entirely different culture. They associate each of the Kiths with one of their Oshiras, seeing them as chosen in a world much like the Eshu are the chosen of Eshu. If they write the Oshira's name, capitalized or emphasis when speaking, they're referring to the Oshiras. Written in lowercase letters only or tossed off the tongue when speaking refers to a tribe. So keep that in mind. Oh, sorry, that was the mentioning about the other tribes. Shadow Court. I did want to add that in there too. The Iku feel that even their normal way of going about business isn't enough to quench the thirst for rebellion and excitement. Join the Iku Abe Koka. The equal join the Shadow Coat become stars. They already hate the Seelie. They're good at riling people up. They love taking risks. Sounds like a perfect for revolutionaries. So why don't more join? There's something not right about it. The nihilism that gets under your skin or leaves you feel dirty. Most sure are careful when they think about what's around them. Some of these dark ones will try to trick Elgabara into fatal dares just to laugh as they die. So yeah, it's some join it, some don't. And you can honestly dive into the depths of the other tribes and what their names are for them, but I will leave that to you folks out there if you want to do further research. But that'll be it for today. Hey, I hope you enjoyed learning about Eshu. So it's interesting because they are deeply connected with the Kithain, the other Kith of Europe, and the courts there. But they are also separated from them. It's because when we can see some other Fey kinds that are from other places of the world, they certainly are much deeper separated. And there are deeper separations. But they have found themselves in a weird position because they are great in number and, honestly speaking, deeply connected because of a lot of things that happen. The Interregum allowed them to become deeper connected with these people than they ever were. And now that the courts are back in full blossom, could I say, with the Seelie returning, it has kind of changed the dynamic of how things are going. But they are Fey of one region, of the Middle East and Africa. And they are unique in their ways, even though they are broadly speaking. And you can find some across the world, because they travel. They're travelers, storytellers, and they just have this knowledge that they want to share. They want to teach the lessons that they've learned. Have people learn and learn from them, whether sometimes indirectly or sometimes very directly, depending on the Eshu that you're talking about. Yeah, an interesting group that I hope you enjoyed learning all about. If you want to check out more of my stuff, it's Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays for tabletop stuff where I go live. All that stuff goes up on YouTube later on, usually a couple days after. Fridays is the World of Darkness Day if you want to catch me live then. I have a live play of Pathfinder 1st Edition, currently on Wednesdays at 9, Crimson Queen, and Discussing Tabletop, a discussion show / podcast on Saturdays at 6, where we talk about news of the week and deep discussion topics in the tabletop world. So everybody out there, also check out my social media link below. I hope you enjoyed. I've given out my shout-outs, but until the next time we chat or do anything, I bid you all a deep and wonderful farewell.